Hello everyone and welcome back. So today's video is going to be another story time inspired video, and I thought I would do it all about Korea. So it's going to be living in Korea, what it was like working in Korea, what it was like teaching English, the culture, the pros, the cons, what I liked, what I didn't like, my feelings. All of that stuff is going to be in this one video. So if you were interested in knowing about my experience, just keep on watching. First, I would like to talk about probably how I became inspired to do such a thing. There was probably a couple of things leading up to it. First thing I would definitely say is in high school, for all of you guys who knew me in high school, if you were watching, hello. For anybody who really knew me at all, knew that I was friends with a lot of the international students who came to my high school. I feel like I really made some awesome friendships through them that I will never forget. So yeah, I believe that the first initial spark happened with being so close to these people from other countries. I loved learning about other cultures and other countries and other languages, and I really truly believe that that was the first initial spark which kind of intrigued me about going to another country. Fast forward a couple years in university, after I met Joseph, we did an after-school program job at the university called Let's Talk. And basically what that was is a couple days a week that you would meet up in the cafeteria and you would be assigned certain groups of internationals. And majority of those were internationals from Asia, such as China. And basically what you did is you just got them talking. So yeah, between having a bunch of international best friends in high school and also doing this Let's Talk job at my local university with the international students, I would say that that is the base of my interest of going to Korea. Fast forward again, I was talking to Joseph and I said, you know, like, this would be something really cool and it would be a great learning experience, because I was kind of getting to the point where I felt like I wasn't moving ahead in life at all. I just really needed a switch up of atmosphere. I needed a switch up of change. I just felt like I really needed this fresh start or this fresh experience to kind of boost me up a little bit in the right direction. Luckily enough, Joseph agreed that this would be a good opportunity. So we started looking online for jobs, and it was literally as simple as typing into Google, teaching English in Korea jobs. So it would bring you to websites. I have no idea what website we clicked on, but anyways, it said, I think it said click this button to talk to an agent. So we clicked the button, we wrote a message saying that we're interested in teaching in Korea, and then that person got back to us within the next day or two. I can remember them saying that they were gonna look for a job that had couple positions because me and Joseph wanted to go together and teach at the same school. So after a couple of days, she said, I have this job application that's open, and she said, you guys are going to set up a Skype interview with the school. I guess she was like the middleman of talking back and forth to these Korean schools and finding out who needed a job and all that kind of stuff. When we had our interview, it was me and Joseph together, and it was the director of the school that we were applying to, as well as one of the teachers, which would be like another either American or Canadian student. In this case, it was an American student who was already teaching at the school. And they would just kind of ask us questions like, why do you like kids? What is your fondest childhood memory? How come you want to come and teach English? What draws you into Korea? Like, you know, like all those general kind of questions, just to kind of get the feel of Joseph and myself through this interview. So the interview went good. It probably lasted about 15 minutes. A couple of days later, we got an email saying that the director would like to offer us a contract. So we got emailed a contract with all of the details, like what we would be getting paid, where the location was, how long it was, like all of this stuff. So our job was to look it over, sign it, scan it, send it back to him, along with getting your passport stuff situated and your working visa. So yeah, we signed the contract, we sent it back. We applied for a working visa, which took so long because our mail kept getting messed up somehow, and it was literally like down to the last minute. So that was pretty stressful. I remember we received our passports like a day or two late from our flight, so we couldn't physically get on that one, so they had to delay our flight, I think like 2 days later, which we did have to pay the $500 difference, so that wasn't too fun. We got everything done, we signed the contract, we sent them our university diploma certificate, or a copy of it, of course, a notarized copy. For those of you who are new to my channel, I'm from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia in Canada, of course, and the airport that flies out of my province is about 5 hours away in the city of Halifax. So we had to drive the 5 hours to get to Halifax to get the first flight, and the first flight was Halifax to Toronto, which was about 2 hours. And then the next flight was Toronto to Vancouver, which was about 6 hours. And then finally the long 13-hour flight, I think it was, from Vancouver to South Korea. So that was an experience. Joseph never flown before, so that was new to him, and it was a pretty long flight for someone who hasn't flown before, but I must say that he loved it. He loved every minute of it. He loves flying, which is pretty ironic because I get super antsy when I'm in the seat for that long, especially if there's like 2 people on either side of me and like people in the row in front of me, and I can't move my legs, and it's just not a fun time. Okay, so we finally landed in South Korea, and as soon as we came off the plane, I remember there being this huge lineup of what we assumed was customs. There was no signage anywhere. We had no idea what lineup to get in. We didn't know anything. There was no way to contact the person who was kind of like the middleman between me and the school. Like, I guess they had somebody who would message us on Skype and say, okay, you need to do this by this date and you need to do that by that date. It was just somebody who the school kind of contacted to be like their liaison. So he was supposed to be picking us up. But anyways, when we got in the line of customs, it literally took 3 hours to get through the lineup, to get to the person at the desk, to kind of show them our passport and our working visa, and for them to let us through. Nobody told us it would be like that, and I guess the liaison had no idea that it was going to be like that. So we finally get out 3 hours later, and as soon as we walk through the doors, there is so many people on the other side of the doors, like with cameras. Like, it almost looked like there was paparazzis. Like, it was the weirdest thing that I've ever witnessed, I'd say. All these people holding up signs and people's names and people picking up this person and people picking up that person. There was so much going on, I had no idea where to look. And finally I seen my name, Courtney, on this little digital board that the liaison guy was holding. He finally packed up our suitcases in his van and we left. So where the airport was like a little island about 2 hours away from like the Seoul area and where we were staying. So it was a little bit of a drive. I fell asleep the whole entire way. Like, I was so exhausted from flying. I didn't care. I just slept in the back of the van. And the first thing I really remember, because it was dark out, is I remember looking out and seeing all the passing cars, and they all had tinted windows, and I couldn't really see like any of the Koreans inside or anything like that, which is kind of stupid, but I mean, it's like your first impression of the country. I just kind of wanted to see regular people living in Korea going about their day, but it was so dark out and all the windows were tinted that I couldn't really see anything, so I just slept. Joseph, on the other hand, told me he was super paranoid. He had no idea what was going on. He was tired. Like, he was really anxious and paranoid, so he was sitting up in the passenger seat of the van, and he told me he was just kind of looking sideways at the guy the whole time, thinking like, how do I know this is legit? How do I know you're not going to take us and like bring us to an alleyway somewhere and God knows what happens? He was just like super paranoid. I found that kind of funny, but it wasn't funny to him, so it was kind of bad. Okay, so the first thing that we did as soon as we got to our city of stay, which was the city called Suwon, it's about a 30-minute bus ride outside of Seoul, and it has about 1 million people living in it. So to me, it was a huge city, but to Korea, it was kind of on the smaller side. So anyway, the first thing that we did is he took us to go eat, and he took us to go eat at this Chinese restaurant, and it was so good. So we ate, and then he took us to a Daiso, which is pretty much like our equivalent of like a dollar store or like a Dollarama. So he took us there, and we got some pots and some pans. We got some instant noodles to kind of eat that night or in the morning, because the very next morning at 10 a.m. we had a meeting with the school. We finally got to our room and we realized that the school gave us 2 rooms, and the travel agent, or whatever you want to call them, who kind of helped us with the job, said that we would have 1 room, like a bigger room for a couple. So that wasn't the case. We had 2 rooms and they were like across the hall from each other. But of course we didn't stay in 2 rooms. We just kind of used that other one as a storage, and we both stayed in the 1 room. For any of you wondering what the apartments are like in Korea, they are really small. So they are equivalent to like a university dorm room with like a bathroom attached, and except that it had this tiny little kitchenette, so it had like a 1 sink I guess, and it had a 1 little glass burner that was kind of like fused on top of the countertop, with like barely no countertop space, so like we barely had room to like cut anything if we were making food. It did come with like a mini fridge with like the kind of bigger ones with like the refrigerators on top, and it came with a washer, and then like this little wardrobe closet thing that we shared to put our clothes in. So that's like the same kind of wardrobe closet that you would see in dorm rooms. We both slept on a single bed for the whole entire time we were in Korea, for the whole 6 months, and that was kind of horrendous. We're used to sleeping in a double bed together here. Downsizing from a double to a single bed was really bad. It took like a whole new set of skills to try to be able to like co-sleep together. So I remember after we got in and we put our bed together and we kind of started unpacking our suitcases and it was time to go to bed, we got into our bed and we shut the lights off, but then right on the door, like right above our door, like on our side, on the inside, was like a big exit sign, and it was literally like glowing in our room. So we're just like, are you serious? And I remember Joseph got up on a chair and he was trying to like fiddle with the exit sign to see how it kind of like popped off so he could figure out how to shut the light off. And it turns out that you can't really shut the light off, but he did block it. So he ended up putting like a piece of paper between the light and then the part where the light would shine out, so it completely blocked it. So it didn't keep us up all night. But as soon as he went and he took the like shell off of the exit sign, a ton of these little tiny spiders all started coming out of it, and he literally flew back from the chair and made this huge big deal about it. And I'm like an arachnophobe, so I hate spiders. I cannot deal with them. I cannot tolerate them. It's just not a good time. We had no idea if they were poisonous. Like, this was our first experience in another foreign Asian country, so we had no idea. But basically what they looked like is, if you know what dandy long legs are, like those weird spiders with the huge long legs and the tiny little bodies, they almost look like little miniature ones of those, but like ones that would kind of come off of a web, with little tiny green bodies. I think they were green, I can't really remember. But it turns out that they don't really hurt you. They're just these little things that you see, you know, just in random places. So they were in that apartment, so I think he quickly got rid of them, and then we went to sleep. So getting up the next day, we did eat our instant noodles for breakfast. We got ready, we got showered, and another thing I want to point out is the bathrooms in Korea. So the bathrooms are not like the western side of the world at all. Luckily, they do have toilets, because I think that's China, that a lot of places just have the hole in the floor. Korea, that wasn't the case. So they had actual toilets and they had a sink. The only thing is the whole bathroom is tiled, and then it does have like a drainage hole on the floor. So when you're getting a shower, there's a shower head that's stationed above the mirror, like above the sink, and then that's kind of how you get a shower. So that part kind of sucked. So when you get a shower, the whole entire bathroom gets wet. The toilet, the sink, the floor, everything. So you have to be careful not to keep anything out that you don't want soaking wet, and kind of tuck it away somewhere. And that became a little bit of a problem for me and Joseph, because I would get up and get a shower first, because of course I had to like do my hair and do my makeup and all that kind of stuff. So I would get up first, I would get a shower, and I would kind of rush out of there, and then Joseph would go in to use the bathroom first thing in the morning, and the whole floor and the toilet are soaked. So he would always be like grumbling at me for that, but within reason. I would kind of be conscious to kind of, you know, like put a towel on the floor and kind of wipe it up and wipe the toilet seat off. So that was fun. We got ready to go. We walked down to the school, and literally the walk from our apartment to the school was literally like a 2-minute walk. It was literally down the road. So we got there, we met with the director and the principal, and yeah, so we met with the other English teachers, and they actually became kind of good friend of ours. They taught us a lot about living there and how to get around, because they've been there a couple more years than we have been. So that was another couple that we became close with while we were there. And there was also another girl who was from the States as well, and she also became friends with us as well. So everyone was kind of like close-knit. I guess you kind of stick together even though you're from other countries. You guys are like the foreigners, so I found that we've created like a close bond that way. So we liked to go do things together and all that kind of stuff. And then we were told who we were gonna have for our classroom teacher. So how it works in Korea if you are teaching at like an English school. And I do want to mention that most times these English schools that you get a job at are like private schools. So how it works is like the kids go to their normal public school in the day, and then they come and go to this school after their public school. So like around 2:33 you will get these other older kids that are elementary kids, and then you will kind of go from there. So we were told who we were going to have as a co-teacher, and how that works is every classroom in the school has a Korean teacher, and then it's a foreign teacher is brought in. So I would be the foreign teacher, and there would be a Korean teacher to kind of help you and do, you know, like make activities, print stuff off, help you with crafts, help you with language barriers, all that kind of stuff. I thought she was nice. She was probably about 3 years older than I was. And yeah, so she was nice. She told me what was going to go on. So we were going to go meet in the basement, which was kind of like the gym area. And all of the kids were going to be there, all of the parents of the kids. What I'm talking about now would be like the kindergarten. So where they're not in actual public school yet, during the day while we're waiting for the older kids to come, they do have kindergarten. So that's going to be like the main part of your day. And then the very last couple hours is when you get the elementary school kids, once the kindergartner kids finish their day and go home. So who we were meeting with that morning was who we were going to get for the kindergartner kids, and all their parents were going to be there. And they were just going to have like this little assembly to kind of introduce us all to their kids and the parents and all of that fun stuff. We went into the gym, and I was introduced to my students, which were 3-year-olds, and they were so cute. They were kind of all looking at me like I had 3 heads, because I mean, how many foreigners would a 3-year-old Korean have seen in their 3 years of life? So they were kind of like looking at me. And anyway, so the principal comes and tells us last minute that we have to get up one by one in front of the whole gym, so like all the parents and the students, and make a little introduction about ourselves, like a 5-minute thing. And I was just like, oh my god, like I'm not good at public speaking. I am not good at any of this stuff whatsoever. So I got super nervous really quick. We all kind of went up and said, you know, hi, like our names, where we were from. We were excited to teach their kids, like all that kind of stuff. So after that, all the parents went home, and then we all went to our corresponding classrooms. So mine in particular was called Happy World, because I guess they all had little themes to the room, which was super cute. And I remember Joseph had a little bit older kids than me. I think he had like 6, he might have had like the 6-year-olds or something, and his world was called Space World. So I had the very first classroom with the youngest kids, and then they graduate from classroom to classroom after that until they get to like legit public school. So my class was called Happy World, and they were the sweetest little kids. They were so cute. There was about 5 or 6 of them in my class, and I loved them so much. They were so cute. It took them a little while to get used to me. I remember one of the guys, the little boys, he would cry for his mom. Like he wanted nothing to do with me because I was this odd-looking foreign teacher. I was not Asian. I looked nothing like them. I looked complete opposite. So he was not having any of that. So I remember the first day of class, which was that same day that we had the assemblies. Basically, we went up and we assigned their little reading spot. So every morning after we came in, I would sit in the corner of the floor, and they would all kind of sit in a little half circle around me, and they all had their little spots that they sat in, and I would read them a book. Keep in mind that I have no teaching experience whatsoever. I come from a science background. I have a science degree from my university, so I majored in biology, so I have nothing teaching experience whatsoever. So this was totally new to me. So basically, my Korean teacher was basically like, okay, so read them this pop-up book. And I said, okay. So here I am, the first day of school. I feel super awkward. The kids aren't warming up to me at all. I'm in a new country. I don't even know what just happened. Everything is completely new. I feel so unorganized, and I'm trying to read a pop-up book to basically toddlers. I'm sitting there reading the book, and I'm shaking. I'm super nervous. I don't know. I was just really nervous. It was just not a good time. So when I was done, I forget what we did after I finished reading the book. I think we just let them color sheets, and we learned their names and all that kind of stuff. So they knew no English whatsoever because they're 3. So literally when I say they knew no English, they didn't even know yes or no. They knew nothing. So of course, Grace had to speak to them in Korean most of the time, until a couple of weeks later when they incorporated some English words in their vocabulary. As the weeks went on, I noticed that Grace, who was my co-partner in that Korean classroom, she was a little bit difficult to work with. So my job was to go home, and actually my job was to pick a book for story time each week, and then we had to do different activities throughout the week to do with that book, whether it be a coloring sheet, a song that we could teach them and learn, anything an activity to do with that book. So I would go home and I would make activities, and I would send them to her in the morning. The next morning when I came to school, she would just kind of be like, this isn't good enough. Why did you think you could do that? They can't read. Why did you put this on it and that on it? And anyways, I just had a really hard time. Again, I had no experience, really with kids beside my own family, and my cousins and stuff like that. So I had no experience in, a classroom setting or how to teach kids. So I feel she was very short-fused in that regard. I feel she was very frustrated with me, and I don't know, I just felt she wasn't the nicest person, and that really affected me so bad. I remember I would get to the point where I would go home for lunch, and I would sometimes I would break down crying, saying oh, I can't go back. I would just have such a hard time. And I think that was how all of this homesickness really started, was from the classroom. And I know she's not a bad person at all. She wasn't out to get me or anything, but she was really hard to work with, again, in the classroom setting, which was really upsetting to me because I was trying my hardest, and she just came across not in a nice way. So it felt she was very power hungry, whatever she didn't agree with, we didn't do. And I was the main teacher in that classroom. I was the one getting paid almost twice the amount as she was, and she was there basically to be my assistant, and that is not the case of how she looked at things. So that was really hard to deal with. And one thing I want to mention about Korea and the whole school system, at least in the private school system, is everything is about face. So everything has to look good to the parents. Everyone has to cater to the parents and what they think. Everything is kind of blindfolded from the parents. It is just ridiculous. I've never seen that sort of thing before. And they even have this kind of parent day where the parents come in. This is probably about a month or two before I left. So this was a couple months in after teaching the kids what they needed to learn a bit of English, and they started some vocabulary at this point. There's this thing called Parent Day, or actually I can't even remember what it was called, but I'm just going to call it Parent Day. And it's a day where the parents come in and they sit there, and then you show them what their kids have basically learned so far. But what it's supposed to be is them sitting in on a normal day of school in a class. I remember when this first got brought to my attention, basically they said, oh, we need to make your script and you have to memorize the script, and everything is scripted. And I was just mind blown. I was just how can I script out a whole entire day to try to you know, like fake teach these kids and have the parents be impressed at the same time. And it's like made such a huge deal about this one day that like it had me scared so bad. Like we were all like so high strung about this one day. So like it actually got to the point where we would do these exercises where I would, you know, like pick a letter and the kid, like I would have to say, okay, what is this letter, like to the child, and I would have to be scripted what letter I was going to ask what child and in what order. But the parents didn't know that. They just thought I was doing random stuff. So it was like really difficult. And of course it was so hot in Korea, and I remember that day Grace had an issue with the air conditioner. Like I guess it like hurt her lungs or something, so I was like sweating bullets and I was so nervous. And I remember just like when the parents were starting to come, I had like beads of sweat. Like I was literally dripping with sweat from nervousness and just from being hot from the air conditioner not being on, and the whole little tiny classroom being filled with like the 5 or 6 parents of these kids plus the kids. We got through all of that stuff. Everything went well. But yeah, that was a super stressful time. So if any of you guys are going to Korea to kind of do the same thing, watch out for that day, because that day is like the most important day of like your whole teaching year, guaranteed. Okay, so that was basically like the school side of things. I'm gonna move on to like Korea as like a country. So it is very hard to get around without knowing somebody who knows Korean, or if you aren't comfortable with trying to talk with body language the whole time, because a lot of Koreans, they don't know English. The more people that know English would be like the university students. Some of the elementary school kids would obviously be taught English. So it is very hard to kind of get around and talk to people, like, you know, just do your everyday thing. The older people were quite the experience in Korea. They kind of just stand there and look at you like you were an alien and have no shame in doing so. I remember Joseph and I were standing at a bus stop to go into Seoul to do like, you know, like weekend stuff, and these older elderly people would kind of crowd around us and kind of like walk around us with their hands behind their back, like they're inspecting everything like this, from your head right down to what shoes you're wearing. And you could hear them mumbling to each other as they're like observing you, and you get the vibe, like, you know, if somebody's talking shit about you or if somebody is like praising you in some sort of way. So majority of the time they were talking shit about us, so I did not appreciate that whatsoever. I remember like it got to the point with people looking and staring that I just wouldn't want to go outside at the end of it. And I know some people might think that's over exaggerating, but coming from a small island like Cape Breton in Nova Scotia, there is not a lot of diversity here. We do not live in a city kind of setting. We have no subway. We don't have trains. Our transit system is almost next to nothing. So we live in a very like country-ish kind of setting, like a big town kind of thing. So everything was like totally new to me. I have never used a subway in my life prior to that. So yeah, it was very nerve-wracking for me. I couldn't get over the fact that people would stare that much. And I know that I am not stick thin. Like I do have some weight on myself. So obviously I was heavier than a lot of the Koreans that were there, so that could have been an issue of why they were staring. Another thing of why they were staring is Joseph has dark features, so he has like dark hair and dark eyes, and he has a little bit of a darker skin tone than me, so he is a hairy guy. So I know that they were looking at like his hairy arms and his hairy legs, because his students would comment on that all the time. They would come and like feel the hair on his arms, because Koreans are not hairy people. Like if you look at their arms and legs, like there's next to nothing, if not no hair at all. That was an experience for sure. And like I said, I had a problem with like heat there, because I can sweat really easily, but I don't sweat from like my arms. I start to like bead up here and like under my nose. So like Korea gets really warm in the spring and summer, so I would be like dying almost every day. And Koreans don't really sweat the same as us. Like they have a much more higher tolerance than us. So I always felt like an outcast, because not only was I kind of heavier than them, but I was blonde and fair and blue-eyed, and I was just the sweating person that they would always see. And I do want to mention that if you were going to Korea, whether it be for teaching or for anything else, bring lots of deodorant and lots of toothpaste, because you cannot find deodorant easy in Korea, because from my knowledge they don't wear it because they don't sweat as much, like I said. So it is so hard to find deodorant, and if you do find it, it's imported from probably America, so you're gonna pay like 3 times the price for a stick of like deodorant than if you were to just bring your own. And same with toothpaste. So if you use their toothpaste, it doesn't have fluoride in it. So, and I know here in the West we're used to using toothpaste with fluoride. So needless to say, when I came back home, I had like 6 cavities, and I was only gone for 6 months, but I had 6 cavities that I had to get filled because everything there is pretty much sugar. Like there's sugar, like sweet rice, there's sweet everything. There's lots of sweets, bakeries, shops, so everything is like sugar and sweet kind of related. So yeah, and like going without the fluoride and the toothpaste was like, it just like destroyed my teeth. So I had lots of cavities coming back home. And I mean, you can find shops like in Seoul, like there's a specific area called Itaewon, which is like the most densely packed area with foreigners that there are in Korea. I think it's like 11% of that district in Seoul makes up foreigners. So you can find lots of shops there if you go in, and you can find like food and candy and accessories and beauty supplies that are shipped over from the West, whether it be America or Canada, but you will pay an arm and a leg for them. I remember looking at frozen vegetables because like we were kind of missing frozen broccoli and like stuff like that we could just make. And I remember seeing a bag of frozen broccoli at one of these stores, and it was like $17 for like a thing of frozen broccoli. So groceries can be a little pricey there depending on what you like to eat. When we went grocery shopping, like I absolutely hated grocery shopping so much because we really couldn't get a chance to go grocery shopping until the weekend when school was out. So we would go on Saturdays, and the grocery shops would be so packed on Saturdays. So we went to a grocery store, which was like, I forget what the name of the building, it's been like a couple of years now, but I remember like the first floor would be like a food court, the second floor would be like Walmart or something like that, like not Walmart but like their version, and then like one of the floors would be a grocery store. And I remember we would go there, and at every end of the aisles in the grocery store there will be like a Korean woman sitting there making samples of whatever they're trying to sell, and you cannot walk down an aisle without them trying to give you something to eat. And if they see that you like it, they will physically pick up the thing that they just, like the frozen thing that they just cooked, and throw it in your cart. And I remember there was one time where there was a lady, she put it in my cart, and I'm like, no, that's okay. I took it out of the cart, and she was like insisting that I took it, so she threw it in my cart again. And I just remember feeling so frustrated. Like I was just like, oh my goodness. Between that and not being able to move because there's so many people and kids like all trying to get through the aisles at the same time. And I remember there was one frustrating moment when we were trying to figure out like, is this laundry detergent or is this softener? Is it like dish soap? Like nothing was in English, so we were just, it was basically trial and error. So we had to buy it, go home, see if it worked. And then we'd know what to buy for next time. We didn't mind doing that, but you do waste some money if you have no idea what you're trying to buy. There were lots of sweet and friendly people as well. I remember like we must be in so many pictures with Korean students, like high school students, because every time we went out there would be a group of students who would stop us and ask us for our photo with them. But it was fun. I'd be lying if I said I didn't like it, but I remember there was one point where our school, we took the kids to the Seoul Zoo, and literally like I couldn't walk 3 feet or there'd be somebody asking me for my photo. And I remember like Grace would just be like, why are they all asking for your photo? And I'd just say, I have no idea, I am not sure. And I remember like she was starting to get a little bit frustrated because I was trying to, you know, like supervise the kids and try to walk with them like without losing anybody, and there would be all these people trying to ask me for my photo. So that would get kind of frustrating, but what can you do? And there were some sweet people, like if we walked into like a beauty store or something, if I wanted to look around, They would like comment on my skin or my eyes because they all really liked my eyes, which was like a nice compliment. It was nice to hear that away from like the negativity side of things. So I really appreciated those little compliments that made me feel little bits of joy here and there. I will say though that if you were looking for some skincare or some high-end beauty products, Korea is definitely the place to be. There was one place called Skin Republic, and my skin was starting to get kind of affected by the pollution there because the pollution gets really heavy. There's actually days when you can download this app and the app will tell you like if the pollution is really bad that day or if it's like okay, and it actually gets to the point where like the kids aren't allowed to go on their field trip if there's one scheduled if the pollution is so high. Type of pollution that I'm thinking of in general is like they call it yellow dust. So it's actually like pollution that can travel over from China, and it's also mixed with like Korean pollution as well, but it literally, if you look up at tall buildings, you can see this yellow haze. But anyway, I remember my skin getting so like dry and it felt like kind of damaged, probably from the heat and the pollution. So I would go and I would get their snail cream. So for those of you who aren't familiar with snail cream, it was this whole skincare line based on snail slime. I know that sounds gross, but like it legit worked. It like repaired my skin. I guess the theory behind it is in an actual snail, they secrete slime, and there's enzymes and vitamins that are in that slime that actually repair the bottom of the snail's foot, because when they're kind of going over sharp rocks and edges, they can get cut. So the stuff that's in their slime actually helps to repair their skin. So the same kind of applies to human skin, where if you apply this stuff, it will repair any damage that is to your skin. And I have to say, I really love that line. I did really enjoy their skincare. I loved Korean beauty stuff. It was like amazing. I should have bought a whole lot more. I still have like a bag full of like sheet masks and stuff like that I just haven't got around to using yet. So one of the things that stood out to me most about Korea was the food, and oh my god, if you're gonna go there for any reason at all, go there for the food, because I'm telling you, it is like some of the best food that we've ever eaten, that we've ever had. It was so good. It actually was more cheaper to go out to eat like at any of these little shops or any restaurant than it was to like buy your own groceries to bring it home and cook. So needless to say, we ate out a lot. We did have some of our favorite restaurants. I remember one of them was actually one of the most expensive restaurants because it was like an authentic Indian restaurant that was there. And oh my goodness, we loved going there. Like we would just go there and be like, we don't care that it's gonna cost like $30 a person to eat here. We're just gonna eat there and have a good time and enjoy our food. The Korean barbecues were so amazing, and there's like this massive grill that's in the center of the table. So someone actually comes and like cooks up a bunch of stuff for you, and everybody around there kind of like shares, or you can cook your own. It comes with like all of these little side dishes to have with it, all these little like dipping sauces and marinades and spices, and oh my goodness, it was just delicious. So we really enjoyed the Korean barbecues. So one of the experience that I really loved was going to the North Korean border. So we actually went on a tour to the DMZ zone, and it was kind of sketchy, I'm not gonna lie, but it was so much fun. Like I loved going there, and like anyone who knows me personally, like who knows me well, knows that I have this like really weird, strange fascination with learning about like stuff like Hitler or North Korea, like stuff like that. Like I have no idea why, but like it's just super interesting to me. I guess it's because it's kind of like taboo in that regards. So I really loved going on that North Korean tour. And I remember before going on the tour, they sent us an email with some warnings, and they told us that we shouldn't be wearing sandals or shorts or tank tops or anything that shows a lot of skin. And the reason because is that when the South is doing like the tour, there's like a North Korean guard inside the blue house, like behind like a mirror, and he's actually taking photos of all of these Western people or foreigner people who were on this tour, and he can actually go back and use the photos of you as propaganda towards, you know, like say if you're wearing sandals or shorts, they could go back to their people and say, oh, look at this Canadian, like they can't afford real shoes, or they can't afford long pants. Do you see how good you have it here? Like just kind of things like that. So that was like super interesting to me. And also, before we went on the actual tour, we had to sign a contract, basically like a waiver form, stating that if something were to happen, like they're not liable, and that something could possibly result in death, because like you don't know when something's gonna happen, like if somebody makes a move, if the North starts like shooting the South, or whatever the case may be, you have no idea what's gonna happen from moment to moment, so they kind of have to cover themselves that way. As soon as you pull up to the area, an American soldier will come on and check your passports, make sure everyone's there, see who's like, you know, like attendance, all that kind of stuff. And they are the ones that take you on the tour of the North Korean border, which was so fascinating. I would do it again in a heartbeat. Like, I would go back to Korea just to do this North Korean tour. I loved it. So I highly recommend doing that if you plan on visiting Korea. I know this video is getting a little long, so I'm going to try to wrap it up, but there's just so much stuff I could talk about. I'm going to get to the point where why we left Korea in the first place. So our contract was signed for 1 year, and we actually left about 6 months in. So we left in July, so we only stayed about 6 months. As I was saying earlier about the co-teaching in my classroom, it got to the point where I was so unhappy going to school every morning. And it got to the point where I didn't dislike a job more than getting up and going to that one. And it was all because of this teacher and how she made me feel. I felt like I was being bullied, and it just wasn't a good feeling whatsoever. From that, and on top of like all of these last minute stresses that they love to put on you, like it's nothing for them to be like, oh, by the way, as you're leaving, go home and make a presentation for tomorrow. All that kind of stuff. So I was just really stressed with everything, and the culture shock and all of that stuff combined made me miss home so much. I've never been a subject to homesickness, but I really know what it feels like now, and it is like the worst feeling on the planet. I would have literally like cut off my arm or cut off my leg if I could have just went like this and been home. It would get to the point every morning where when I was out of the shower getting ready and Joseph was in the shower, I would sit there and I would cry. Like, I would actually go online and look up our local radio station and listen to that while I was getting ready, and it made me so sad. Like, I would cry all the time. And it wasn't because Korea itself was bad. It was because I knew I had to get up and go to this school and have one of these experiences throughout the day. As we were there a couple of months, Joseph would want to go out on the weekends and do all of these things, and I would just be like depressed, and I just wouldn't want to move anywhere. Like, I would want to just stay in bed, stay in the apartment, not go out, not go grocery shopping. Like, it was getting really bad, and that is definitely not me as a person. So yeah, like homesickness, like I was getting really depressed, and like I feel so bad for anybody who says that they're homesick, especially for people who can't physically get home. I don't want anybody to feel like that. It was literally, like I said, the worst feeling in the world. While I was having all of this homesickness stuff, and Joseph as well, Joseph was homesick, but he wasn't getting the same like depressing feelings as I was getting. So as we were doing that, he was having some family issues at home, and I was having some financial family issues like at home with my parents. So everything just kind of like creeped up on us all at once, and it was just this big mass ball of stress. So we decided, we're like, Joseph, I don't know what this is gonna do, but we have to go home. We have to tell the school that we're going home. And I remember the day that we were telling them, it was so hard. We walked to school that morning, and we told the director and the principal that we wanted to talk to them and that we had to leave because of a family emergency going on back home. And they were not very impressed. They were understanding as much as they could be, but they were not impressed. That is like a really big thing to the school, to make sure that you have the same teacher all year round, especially for this like small group of babies as kids that I had. So they were kind of stressed out of telling the parents that their kid was going to have to go through like a teacher change halfway through the year. So I remember I had to come in and have this big meeting with the teachers and tell them why I was leaving and do this whole spiel of stuff, which was super stressful to me. But I mean, they all understood. They all know that we have families back home and that life happens and this happens and stress. So they understood, and everybody took it pretty well. From my knowledge, nobody pulled their child out of school, which would obviously be a massive loss for the school, because it is a private school, so they get direct funding from these parents to run the school. But because we did cancel the contract, we had to pay back the airfare, which the school covered for us to get there. So we had to pay them back the $1,000 each, and there was like a fee to cancel the contract. And then because we were leaving the apartment, we had to pay like a cleaning fee for them to get somebody to come in and clean it once we're gone. And also we had to do Skype interviews with other teachers that would be replacing us. So basically we had to organize these Skype interviews and do all of this stuff, which I didn't agree with, because yes, we are leaving, but we're paying for that leave. Like, we are paying back the money, we are paying the fees for this and this, but it's your job to kind of figure out who's going to come and replace us. And one of the things that are really like standing out in my mind as I'm talking about this is there was one girl, and she was a colored lady. She was so nice. We had an interview with her, and she was so bubbly, and she was so passionate about coming to Korea and teaching. It was like amazing. I remember her enthusiasm and her persona about her was just so high, and she was such a wonderful person. And when we told the director, you know, like, what do you think about her? Like, she was amazing. His response was, yes, we really like her, but we don't think she would be a good fit at this school because there is already one colored teacher here. And to me, where you have to limit, you know, like how many colored teachers you have at a school, like, oh, we already have one, we can't have another one or it's gonna upset the parents. You know, it was 2016 at the time, it wasn't like 1977, so that was like a huge shock to me. Like, they are still kind of back in some of the racist times, and not everybody, but just the culture as a whole has to do a lot of, you know, like growing up in this time frame of the world. Korea is all about face, making the parents happy, making this person happy, putting on a facade, all of that stuff. So whatever. Our last shift there at the school, we had like an assembly, and I remember we had to get up in front of the school, like the kindergartner school, and say like a little goodbye speech and all this stuff. And like, I don't know, like, even though I was super happy that we were going home, I missed my kids. Like, I miss those students so much. They meant the world to me. They were the cutest little things. I really enjoyed teaching them English. By the time that I was leaving, they could actually sit there and understand what you were saying and kind of talk back. I thought that was so cute that they called me Courtney teacher. It was just adorable. So I remember my kids got me a cake, and the parents wrote some really nice goodbye messages in the kids' like little scribblers that they brought home every day. Some of them gave me gifts. I couldn't thank them enough for any of that stuff. They were like really hospitable in that regards. Like, they really did care. They wanted to send me off on like good vibes. So it was really nice. I don't have anything bad to say about the school. The school was super clean. They did care about their students. Everyone was kind of close-knit. Again, the only thing that I had an issue with was my co-teacher in that classroom and how she made me feel. Okay, so the last couple things that I kind of just want to say is, even though I had like some crappy experiences in Korea, like with that teacher or with some racism or with some dirty looks or the homesickness, I would not take that back at all. Like, that 6 months has taught me so much about myself and helped me grow as a person that I would not take any of that back. I learned about myself, a little bit about my insecurities a little bit more. I learned that I can get really homesick, and that I learned to appreciate this tiny place that I call home. I mean, what's life if you're not taking some risks and figuring out what you like? I believe that concludes this super long video. I'm sorry it's been so long, but there was lots to talk about. I got a lot of it up. I obviously didn't include my horrendous hair story in there because I did make another video talking about how Korea has actually ruined my hair. I will link that video at the end of this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it gave you some insight of what it's like living over in Korea. So if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. And also, if you would like to see more by me, just hit that subscribe button. And I will be seeing you guys in my next video. Bye!